Good afternoon, cock and ball torture sawman fans. My name is Jake and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the manga sensation that has the world at the edge of their seats, chapter 109 of Chainsaw Man. We're going to be talking about the potential identity of the third horseman of the apocalypse, the potential consequences of Denji exposing himself as Chainsaw Man, and something crazy someone pointed out on Twitter last week. But first, class is once again in session. I've linked a poll at the top of the description where you guys can vote on what grade you think this chapter of Chainsaw Man should receive. A, B, C, D, or F. And in next week's chapter review video, we're going to go over the overall chapter GPA of this chapter, as well as some of your guys' comments on this video down below. Speaking of which, let's talk about what you guys thought of chapter 108 of Chainsaw Man. About 330 or so people voted in my last chapter poll, and if that was you, thank you so much. And after crunching some of the numbers, we came up with a GPA of 3.84. Now, I don't really remember what some of the other chapter GPAs were in the past, but if I'm not wrong, that actually might be the highest chapter GPA of any chapter we've had so far. And aside from some of the more risky to talk about things that happened in that chapter, I did also think that that was one of the best chapters we've gotten so far, just from how wacky and out of left field it was. But moving on from the chapter GPA, let's look at some of your guys' comments on last week's video. Trope says, I feel like there's a chance Makima previously had the other three horsemen under her control, and only after her death were they released back onto the world to move with their own free will. I think I said something last week about potentially all of the horsemen having it out for Denji, and maybe they're all at the school trying to kill him. But this theory actually kind of makes that make a little more sense, because what if it really was Makima that was holding him back because she's a fan, but they're his enemies? We're going to talk about that a little later in the video, because there is a point someone made on Twitter that I thought was crazy, and it pertains to this a little bit. And next up is a comment from a user named Stranger. Big Sister is definitely Famine, because horsemen appear in one order only: war after conquer, famine after war, and death after famine. It makes sense since the youngest horseman is Nayuta, Yoru is a high schooler, now he introduced to her older sister. I bet death is a MILF. Also, earrings represents balanced scales, which the famine horseman carries with it. So almost everything Stranger said in this comment we're actually going to talk about later in this video, because it's actually pretty massive. So I don't want to blow my load on this now, but I will say, yes, I agree it would be awesome if the next horseman is a MILF. Thank you guys so much for your comments on last week's video. Remember to leave your comments down below on this video as well, and maybe we'll talk about it in next week's chapter review video. And while you're down in the description checking out that voting link, remember to leave a like on this video and subscribe to my channel. It helps me out a lot, and I love making Chainsaw Man related content. Now that I've shilled myself to my heart's content, let's just dive into chapter 109. So if we start from the beginning of this chapter, we have Yuko digging her grave deeper and deeper by killing two professional devil hunters. First of all, why are the professional devil hunters always so useless? Every time a nameless devil hunter shows up at the scene, they're dead within literally panels. This happened in the Bomb Girl fight. This happened when Denji kidnapped Kobeni. I'm pretty sure it happened at many more points in part 1 as well. What kind of Simpsons logic is this where all the adults are literally useless? I feel like I've talked the Yuko situation to the ground at this point. We've talked about her for the past like 5 weeks in a row. At this point, I think it's solidified that she's just completely fucked. It doesn't really matter that she's been manipulated by a deity from hell. She's killed students, she's killed adults. At this point, I think she's just a plot device. Another thing I wanted to talk about with this week's chapter was something I noticed from pretty much the beginning of the chapter, and that's that some of the panels this week felt a little underdeveloped. This is no criticism of Fujimoto's art at all, and if you asked me to make a chapter to this quality, it would take me probably a million years to draw it. But now that Chainsaw Man's being released weekly again, I kind of worry that Fujimoto might be overworking himself. And if you're wondering what I'm referring to in specific, I thought some of the backgrounds in some of the panels weren't at the Fujimoto level of spectacular that they usually are, as well as that one panel with Asa knocked out on the floor that looked kind of unfinished. Not that everything needs to be at a crazy high level of quality, I'm just somewhat worried about Fujimoto knowing the crazy lifestyle a lot of mangaka will put themselves through. I don't know if anyone else remembers this, but a little over a year ago, Gege Akutami put out a particularly rough chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, then he had to go on an extended health-related hiatus after that. Once again, these mangaka owe us nothing, and this isn't a criticism at all. Usually when something looks rough in a weekly release, it gets fixed in the volume version anyway. Please do not take this section as me complaining about the quality of art, because I swear I'm not trying to do that at all. It's just my job in these videos to notice any and every little detail I can. So moving on from there, let's talk about our new horseman a little bit. So first of all, because it's all but confirmed at this point that every horseman of the apocalypse is going to be a young woman, I'd like to petition that we start referring to them as horse girls. Second of all, we gotta bring an end to the debate over who this horse girl is, Death or Famine. Unfortunately, we won't know for sure until Fujimoto names her, but a few comments from my comment section last week and one Twitter user's crazy observation might help swing the debate. Last week, I was absolutely certain that this new horse girl was going to be Death because of just a statistically decent guess, and her power seemed like that of a death devil. You know, you can bring someone back to life after dying. I don't know, it just seems weird that Famine could do that. But like I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the comments, the biblical appearance of the Horseman of the Apocalypse is control, war, famine, then death. Which, it would make sense that the new horse girl is Famine then, because we've already got two Horsemen of the Apocalypse in the correct order. Control, then war. And also from Stranger's comment before that her earrings look like the scales that the Famine Horseman carries around with him. To me, Stranger's comment makes perfect sense and has kind of swung me more towards Famine, but I did want to point out one counterpoint that I saw circulating on Twitter over this past week. So yeah, the new horse girl's earrings could be scales, but they also kind of look like Pochita's tail. The current circulating theory is that this horseman has battled Chainsaw Man twice in the past and won both times, taking the ripcord as trophies and wearing them as earrings. Which would be pretty fucking metal if you ask me. And that would also kind of make sense with Trope's comment on last video as well, where he mentioned Makima could have been holding the other three horsemen back. Maybe because she's such a big fan of Chainsaw Man, she doesn't want these people who pose a threat to him coming and killing him. So the jury isn't necessarily out as to who this new horse girl is yet, because only time and Fujimoto can tell, but at least we have a few pieces of design-based evidence that we can use to speculate. Alright, now that tinfoil hat time is over, it's time to talk about the return of our king Denji. And boy, does he constantly look like a hollow shell of the person he used to be. Every single panel of Denji in part 2 so far shows him with deep bags under his eyes and acting out erratically. He clearly isn't sleeping, and his behavior is that of someone who has nothing else to lose. I don't know if Nayuta's still in the picture or not, because that'd clearly be something he still has to lose, but to me, something in his brain must have broken part 1 when he was yelling about how much he wanted sex right after Aki and Power died. I'm gonna stop armchair psychoanalyzing cartoon characters because it's gonna look extremely cringe if I turn out to be wrong. What's most important is that Denji exposed himself as Chainsaw Man to 3 separate students at his school, and that's gonna come with its consequences. Off the top of my head, Yoshida already says things would get fucky if his identity is exposed. I wouldn't even be surprised if Yoshida's forced to kill that bystander student that saw Denji transform into Chainsaw Man just to keep things under wraps. But now Denji's also in super hot water because he exposed himself to the one person that wants him dead the most, Yoru. I see this next chapter going one of 3 ways. Number 1, Denji just gets fucked up by Yoru and the super strong uniform sword. Number 2, Denji starts simping for the half-naked girl in front of him, making Yoru decide to take a different approach, i.e. getting him to fall in love with her and turning him into a weapon. Or number 3, Fujimoto does something completely out of left field that none of us are expecting. Vote now on your phones. I personally believe number 3 is the most likely out of all options. I also loved how Denji was unintentionally able to get around the Justice Devil's mind reading power by just not thinking. This man is literally so stupid that he can't even get his mind read. It's like that episode of Futurama where Fry couldn't get controlled by the flying brains because he was too inbred. Anyway, it's great to see that our boy is finally back and ready to kick some ass. That's about all for today's chapter review. If you like this series, let me know by liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Make sure to stay up to date by hitting the bell button so you'll know anytime I post a new chapter review, a new Chainsaw Man video, or any of my other quirky anime or manga related content. Also, feel free to follow me on Twitter. I have links to all my social medias down in the description below. And also, if you have a little bit of time, why don't you check out my new video from a few days ago where I made Denji's special toast from episode 2 of the Chainsaw Man anime. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Wow, 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 wow.